In this video, they kind of start to talk about white collar crime and how, the intent of the criminal isn't really to hurt someone, such as like a physical crime, like a burglary or something like that, or a robbery. And they talk about how, the criminal really doesn't have shame or any guilt in doing the acts like committing these crimes that they do, taking money from people and doing shady business and whatnot. Um, they then go into talk about in the early 1900s. They talk about how white collar crime really wasn't like a prosecuted crime in the courts. There really wasn't any. There really wasn't any regulations that made it like a leading issue or an important issue, really. And then talk about like a moral shift in the mid 1900s, kind of like the 50s, 60s, that time frame, and how it went from ethics weren't really a main issue in business. It was just kind of well, everybody did the same thing. Everybody, did things this way, and it wasn't really an issue to, all of a sudden these ethics and, how businesses do things, it matters. And now, how it greatly impacts businesses' decisions and the things that they do. They talk about how, these unethical practices have led to regulations. So they talk about you can businesses can do something totally legal but unethical, and these unethical acts have led to regulations and whatnot. And then they on to talk about two ways to get people to behave in non-welfare maximizing ways is how they put that. And then the first way, or the first thing that they talked about, was that these people don't really actually do calculations. They just kind of throw things out there. And then the second thing they talked about was they do the calculations, but their expectations are low. Later on, they talk about they talk about an insider trading case. I couldn't really pick it or remember it off the top of my head, but they talked about in this example that they gave, and they talked about how this guy was in a meeting with a bunch of executives in this business, and from the time the meeting ended to him committing this crime of insider trading was 23 seconds, I think. And how he didn't really think about oh, I could get caught for this, or I might somebody's gonna catch me for this eventually, because insider trading is actually has a high chance of you being caught from committing this act or this crime. And they talk about how there really wasn't a lot of thought going through this guy's head. He didn't really think about the consequences of committing the crime. And that kind of was interesting to me. And they talk about how these people, these criminals, they really don't feel any remorse when they commit these corporate crimes. And I kind of found this interesting because these corporate crimes can really affect people, in some instances a lot more than physical crime, getting assaulted or something. Yeah, physically you're harmed, but in these corporate crimes or white collar crimes, like you can get your entire life or like retirement fund or retirement accounts or like a whole business can fall because of this, like these issues. Or you're like, say you have a retirement account with $100,000 and you go look at it and it's gone. That really affects people, and it's kind of crazy to me. They then go to talk about uh, how in order to have a successful prosecution of corporate crime, you almost need it to happen first. And that was interesting to me because, like, normally in crimes, you try to catch criminals before, you know, a crime happens, and you try to catch them before, another one happens or something like that. And, you can't really catch someone for, doing insider pull or like committing insider trading, and they haven't done it yet. They haven't done anything wrong yet. You almost have to wait for them to to do something wrong or to do something illegal. And that's kind of interesting to me. And then go on to talk about a case where someone created these accounts that were fake and these numbers that were fake and presented it to some company's CFO. Um, and then, the CFO was kind of like skeptical about these numbers and these accounts because, I mean, somehow they didn't make sense to him. And he, the CFO called him out on it, and the guy had to like leave the room and come back and say, yeah, these aren't right. This isn't right. These numbers aren't correct. And it was really, I mean, I found this really interesting because like these like white collar criminals can like, really, they can execute a perfect crime or like a scam or crime behind someone's back, and like they can do this on paper perfectly and like not feel anything and like be totally fine with it. But like when they're confronted with it, like, and it's brought up and they're called out on the issue, it's like they can't like follow through with it. They can't lie to someone or do something wrong to someone because they're finally like they're witnessing what they're doing. And this kind of goes into how I would manage a business and the impact on that. It's because like I would be extremely cautious of who like I hire, who I already have like on staff and working for me already. Because like they said, anybody can do these crimes and not feel a thing, and it's pretty crazy to me that your best friend or your best worker for years can be pulling these stealing money from your business all this time. And that's just that would make me paranoid and nervous as a business owner. I'd constantly want to be looking at the numbers, if they make sense, if something happened, like if there's money pulled out from something. Like I'd want to know, I'd want to know who did it, what department, all that kind of stuff, and then kind of like weed out who it could be and all that stuff. And then I'd also be cautious of who I do business with. Like I wouldn't want to do business with another company or another representative or whatnot, and not know like anything about them, not know like what they like, who they're like, or like what they're like, or who they really are. And because I mean, again, anyone can really commit these crimes, so I'd really just be like, I'd really be paranoid all the time.